There were two men in Tina Turner's life who defined the shape of what love could be. One who showed her what it looked like when love became a weapon, and one who showed her what it looked like when it became a home. She spent 16 years with the first and nearly 4 decades with the second, and the distance between those two experiences was the distance between two entirely different lives, lived by the same woman in the same body, carrying the same voice that had always known what it was capable of, even when the person it belonged to was not permitted to know. She was 17 years old when she first heard Ike Turner play. It was the late 1950s at Club Manhattan in East St. Louis, and the Kings of Rhythm were on the stage, and Anna Mae Bullock was in the audience with her sister, and what she felt when she watched Ike Turner lead his band was not attraction, but fascination. The recognition of someone who understood something about music that she wanted to understand too. She did not find him handsome. She would say later, in the plain language she always used for plain truths, that she had not been drawn to him physically at all. What drew her was the music, the band, the specific energy of a room organized around a man who knew how to use sound to command a space. She got onto that stage by persistence and by the accident of circumstance. A microphone, a band break, a dare she took, a voice that came out of her and silenced the room. Ike Turner heard what she could do and understood immediately what it meant for him. He needed a voice like that. He found one. He built his next decade around it, and he built the woman it belonged to into something that served his purposes, which was not the same thing as seeing her. He gave her a name, Tina Turner, chosen because it rhymed with Sheena, his favorite fictional character, trademarked in his name so that if she ever left, he could replace her with another woman and keep the brand. He gave her the name and he kept it, legally, as insurance against the possibility of her freedom. This was the first thing he gave her. The second thing he gave her was a career, real and significant and built on her voice, tours and records and television appearances, and the explosive live shows of the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, which became one of the most kinetic acts in American music. And the third thing he gave her, beginning almost immediately and continuing for 16 years without significant interruption, was violence. She would describe it in the memoirs she eventually wrote when she had enough distance and enough safety to write them, with the same directness she brought to everything. He beat her with a shoe stretcher. He threw hot coffee in her face, giving her third-degree burns. He used her nose as a punching bag so many times that she could taste blood running down her throat when she sang. He hit her before shows, and she went on anyway, and the audience saw the Tina Turner they had come to see. The force of nature, the voice that could fill any room, without knowing what had happened backstage. She sang with injuries she had not chosen and did not discuss and had no mechanism for escaping, because escape required resources she did not have, and safety she could not guarantee, and the specific courage that builds slowly and must be built while the danger is still present. She attempted suicide in 1968. She survived it and kept going, which is what she did. Kept going in the specific way that a person keeps going when the alternative is impossible and the path forward is the only path available, one show at a time, one recording session at a time, one night at a time, on the road that Ike controlled and she was not permitted to leave. They had children. They had a marriage, in the technical sense of a legal arrangement entered into in Tijuana in 1962 at a ceremony she did not want and could not refuse, followed by a wedding night she would describe in her memoir as a kind of rape. They had a shared career that produced real music, Proud Mary, Nutbush City Limits, River Deep Mountain High, music that the world received as the product of a partnership. And that was, in a certain sense, exactly that. A partnership in which one person provided the talent and the other provided the infrastructure and the violence that kept the talent in place. She left him on July 4, 1976. It happened in a car on the way to the Dallas Hilton after a fight that left her face bruised and bleeding. She waited until he fell asleep in their hotel suite. Then she got up, took what she had, 36 cents and a mobile credit card, and walked out of the room and across a freeway to a Ramada Inn on the other side. She asked the manager for a room on credit. She called someone who could help. She filed for divorce 3 weeks later. She gave Ike almost everything in the settlement: the recording studio, the publishing companies, the real estate, the 4 cars, the royalties, and kept 2 things: her jewelry and her name. The name he had trademarked in his own name to keep her trapped. The name that was now hers in a way it had never been before, because she was the one who was going to carry it forward, alone, into whatever came next. What came next was hard. For almost 2 years, she received food stamps. She played small clubs to pay off debts that the divorce had left her responsible for. She rebuilt from 36 cents with the methodical determination of someone who has survived something that should have broken her, and has decided, on the other side of the surviving, that the breaking is finished. She performed. She recorded. She waited. She practiced the Buddhist meditation that she had discovered in the early 1970s and that had given her, in the years when she had no other refuge, the interior space that Ike's control could not reach, the specific quiet of her own mind, which was the only place she had ever been entirely free. The rebuilding took years. It was not dramatic and it was not quick. It happened in the way that real rebuilding happens, slowly, incrementally, through the accumulation of small decisions that individually seem insufficient and collectively constitute a life. Let's Stay Together in 1983, Private Dancer in 1984, the Grammy stage in 1985, the stadiums, the world tours, the specific vindication of an artist who was told her time had passed, discovering that her time had not passed, that it had in fact not yet fully arrived, that what she was capable of in her 50s exceeded what she had been permitted to be in her 20s and 30s, because in her 50s she was finally doing it without someone else's hands around her throat. She met Erwin Bach in 1985 at an airport in Germany. He had been assigned by EMI to pick her up, a 30-year-old music executive, German, quiet in the specific way of someone who is comfortable enough in himself not to need to fill silence. She was 47 years old, and she had been traveling, and she had every reason to be tired and preoccupied with the concert ahead of her. Instead, she looked at him and felt her heart go, as she would describe it later, boo bum. Her hands went wet. She thought, and later said, in the plain language she used for plain truths, "Taman för each other day," that this was love at first sight. She had not believed in love at first sight before this moment. She believed in it after. What Erwin Bach gave her was different in kind from anything she had received before in her personal life, different in the specific way that things are different when they are the opposite of what came before, rather than simply less extreme. He did not need to control her. He was not made larger by making her smaller. He did not require her diminishment as the condition of his own presence. He was, by her account, and by every observable fact of the 38 years they spent together, a person who wanted the same things she wanted: a life, a home, a place to be quiet, the particular piece of 2 people who have chosen each other and keep choosing each other across the decades without the choice becoming less deliberate. He proposed to her when she turned 50. She said she didn't believe him. Not because she doubted his sincerity, but because the category of a proposal, the formal declaration of permanent commitment, was one that she had encountered before, in a context that had taught her its dangers, and the thing that had been done to her in the name of marriage made the institution itself feel like something to approach with extreme care. She continued the relationship without saying yes. He waited. He did not make her wait, feel like a failure, or a rejection, or a source of tension. He simply continued to be what he was, which was present and consistent and genuinely interested in the person she was rather than the person he needed her to be. They moved to Zurich together in the mid-1990s, to Küsnacht specifically, a suburb overlooking Lake Zurich, a place called Château Algonquin, a house with gardens and water and the specific quality of a life from which the noise of the world had been deliberately excluded. She had spent decades being fully and loudly public, stages and cameras and interviews and the enormous apparatus of a career that required her to be available, visible, present for other people's consumption. In Küsnacht, she found the opposite, the quiet, The lake, the morning walks, the absence of obligation to be anyone other than herself in a space that she had chosen and that Erwin had helped her build. She said no to marriage for many years. Then, in 2013, after 27 years together, she said yes. The ceremony was at their home beside the lake. She was 73 years old. He was 56. The wedding was private, not the kind of event that requires documentation or witnesses beyond the people present, not the kind of event organized for anyone other than the two people at its center. She had relinquished her American citizenship earlier that year, becoming a Swiss citizen, choosing the country where she had found peace over the country where she had been born and where she had spent most of her career. The country that had given her the Grammys and the stadiums and the chart positions had also given her 36 cents on a Dallas freeway and 16 years of violence in the name of a partnership that was never equal. Switzerland had given her the lake and the quiet and Erwin. In 2016, she was diagnosed with kidney cancer. In 2017, Erwin Bach gave her one of his kidneys. This is a fact that resists easy summary because it is the kind of fact that exceeds the vocabulary available to describe it. A man who loved a woman giving her a piece of his own body to keep her alive, an act that is simultaneously medical and profound and entirely ordinary in the way that things done out of genuine love are ordinary, which is to say that they do not require explanation to the person receiving them, only to the people watching from outside. She had the transplant. She recovered. They lived in the house by the lake, together in the quiet they had built across nearly 4 decades. She died on May 24, 2023, at the age of 83 at home in Küsnacht. Erwin Bach was there. The accounting of her life, when it is done, will include the 16 years with Ike, the music they made, the violence she survived, the name he gave her that she kept and made her own, the 36 cents on the freeway that was the beginning of everything that came after. Those years cannot be removed from the accounting because they are part of what she was, part of what she survived and transformed and carried forward into the decades that followed. She said, near the end of her life, that she had forgiven him. Not because what he did was forgivable in any comfortable sense, but because she understood, as she understood most things, with the plain clarity that had always been her primary mode of perceiving the world, that holding the weight of it was a burden she was no longer willing to carry. But the accounting will also include the 38 years with Erwin, the airport in Germany, the hands that went wet, the proposal she didn't believe, the lake in Küsnacht, the kidney given without hesitation, the quiet mornings in a house she had chosen beside water, she found peaceful. The accounting will include the fact that she spent the last and longest chapter of her life in the specific condition that had eluded her for the first 4 decades of it, loved, clearly and consistently, by a person who did not need to diminish her in order to be present, who found in her company something that he wanted to keep choosing every day for 38 years. Ike Turner gave her a name and a career and 16 years of fear. Erwin Bach gave her a life. She carried both forward into everything she became. The strength that the first built, the particular indestructible quality of a person who has survived something that should have ended her and discovered on the other side of the surviving that she is still entirely herself. Chadam sawa dies rior iularis darikil. Chetstier. Hers rio preserves, and not something she would have wished to give back, even if giving it back were possible, but the peace that the second gave her was also real, and it was the thing she had needed all along. The thing that the church in Nutbush had offered a version of when she was a child. The thing she had been reaching for in the music through all the years when reaching for it in her life was not permitted. She found it, finally, beside a lake, in Switzerland, in a quiet house, with a man whose heart had gone boo-bum at the same moment hers did, at an airport in Germany, on an ordinary afternoon in 1985. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more untold moments from the lives of music's greatest legends, the loves that built them, the losses they survived, the lives they finally chose, and if you've ever found peace after pain. Tell us about it in the comments. Hit the notification bell so you never miss one of these stories.